The 60 range in Final Fantasy XI was when you realized your complaints about how hard it was to level were kind of hilarious in retrospect. Huge experience requirements per level, distant and dangerous camps that add travel time, risk, it was just ridiculous. But this did mean that there was plenty of time and frankly plenty of reason to take a break and try out that new artifact set of yours with some fun Notorious monsters, and there were plenty. So hey guys, it's Sun4Games. Welcome back for more of my favorite Notorious Monster series, with part 3 of the level 60 range, which at this point is looking like it's going to get up to like part 7 or 8 by the time we're done with it. Check out parts 1 and 2 of the 60s if you haven't already, or just go all the way back to levels 1 through 10 and watch me finally earn some of my favorite boots in the game. And then watch the whole series, because we run into some really amazing Notorious Monsters in this wild ride. Especially in this one, because now we're getting to some gear that people could actually hold on to, save for the rest of the game, or if nothing else, make that final leveling experience to 75 that much more enjoyable. Although, not so with our first mob, the Antikin Proconsul? I think it's Proconsul. Proconsul. If any of you actually remember this guy, more power to you, because he's really kind of boring. He hung out right inside one of the entrances to Quicksand Caves, behind one of those stupid doors that you needed like 3 to 4 to 5 people to actually open. Nobody went back behind these things. I think we did a camp once across the hall, but that was for like something totally different. He also doesn't actually drop any gear. What he does drop are the scroll for Stone 4 and Stonega 3, the first and last tier of black magic spells at 75 for the single target and AoE versions of Stone. Black magic scrolls were a one-time use, and obviously couldn't be resold. This made them actually fairly valuable, especially those uniquely useful for some weird capped fight something or another. This meant that they could often be sold for a pretty penny, and the highest level versions was especially true, because they were far more valuable than like Stonega 2 or Stone 2. I mean, hell, people were casting Stone 4 on gods. It's an important spell to have, especially for those weaknesses. Because look, Stone is obviously the shittiest of the magic the way that black magic worked in Final Fantasy XI. Thunder is king, Stone sucks. That's the deal. But with elemental weaknesses, it was still an important thing to have. My point is, this stuff was a moneymaker. I hunted some standard enemies later on that dropped Returga 3 off in Bedeau for days because of how much that went for. Final Fantasy XI was one of my favorite games, in part for its diverse economy. Gear drops weren't the only thing you had to hunt to make the big bucks. And this random Notorious monster in Quicksand Caves was one of the first of many mobs that I happened to encounter that dropped some like useful scrolls that made me a lot of money. Then there was the opposite, like these next two, where the only benefits were the gear they dropped, and not even gear that could be sold, at least after that update that made it all like rare exclusive from the Notorious Monster version. Hiding off in Fei-Yin, you guys have brought up these damn shadows so many times that I almost didn't do them out of spite, but I've gone after them so many times myself that I couldn't just leave them off to the wayside. I do of course mean the western and eastern shadows that drop the Retaliators and Vali's bow. There are northern and southern versions of the shadows as well, but I honestly couldn't tell you if that Great Axe and Shield were any good. The fists and bow though, they were fantastic. The 4 shadows all spawn in the same little cluster of rooms on the west side of the map. The tricky part was that to get there you had to travel through the basement level, which was far more dangerous, and occasionally had true sight enemies just wandering around. Lots of magic aggro, you had to sprint from stairs to stairs, hoping that you didn't get caught in a section where refreshing your sneak and invis would probably get you killed. I can remember a few times I was using sneak oils and prison powders and praying that an enemy wouldn't turn around before I got that invis back up. And let's not forget that Fei-Yin is also out in the middle of nowhere itself. I mean, unless you had an outpost warp to Bucentine Glacier, which was frankly like required, Teleport Vassal was your best bet, and that was still like a hike across Zarkbar to even get to Bucentine Glacier. Then you had to snake your way back and forth across the stupid zone to even get to its lowest point, and that distant corner that Fei-Yin sat in, like way up there. I go into this excruciating detail about the frustration and distant location of these NMs to explain my next point. Once you were out there, you were out there. You didn't want to hop back and check to see if they were up later. You wanted to get it done. You went out there to camp for days because you needed those Retaliators. You didn't leave until you either died or the job was done. It was rough, but these items were worth it. The Retaliators dropped by the Western Shadow were hands down the best hand-to-hand option at level 50, and honestly could be worn straight through 75 by pretty much anybody. At 75, of course, there were better options, but you could still wear these for a while. They weren't that bad while you were getting your shit together as a fresh 75 monk. It was just one of those things where one of the first things you checked when you pulled a 50+ monk into your party was, does he have the Retaliators, or their non-rare exclusive variety, or the whole time you're going to be wishing that you got a different monk? I mean, they were hard to get. With the earlier reasons for why the shadows were so annoying to get aside, it was just tough. Shadows could be a pain, and they were expensive too, at least the non-notorious monster version. But man, were those things solid. As for the Eastern Shadow, he tells a similar story. I mean, I'm not as familiar with Ranger gear, but I'd heard rumors of how amazing this bow was, and the stats certainly suggest that it is that good. As for the Eastern Shadow, he tells a similar story. I'm not as familiar with Ranger gear, but I'd heard rumors of just how amazing this bow was, and the stats certainly seem to suggest that it is that good. Did I mention that both of these shadows also have a 10-hour respawn? 10 hours. This thing was a pain. They were a huge pain. Which leads us to our man of the hour, Paladin's favorite ring, which was obtained in Sandoria's ridiculously dangerous sewers that are just kind of hanging out under their dungeon. One of the absolute worst types of enemy in the game due to its pure resilience to death, the lovely Sewer Syrup and his jelly ring. Now, Sewer Syrup has changed the locations a bit over the years. When the Groundstones were first introduced into the game, it affected how monsters were killed in certain areas, and Square Enix had to take a step back and adjust the locations of certain notorious monsters that were being, heavily destroyed because of the changes. Mr. Syrup was one of them, although honestly, I have no idea where he popped before. I guess another corner of the zone. The Jelly Ring, though, hasn't changed all that much. 5% damage reduction was desirable to pretty much everybody, especially Paladins, and there was a time where not everything spewed magic AoEs at you every few seconds to make you regret that plus 5% magic damage it had on it as well. And this guy was a huge pain. Things would link at the worst possible times, and it was just honestly tough. Slimes were a pain to take down, they resisted physical damage pretty heavily, and had just enough AoEs to make shadow tanking a bit of a chore. He's not too hard these days, but back in the day you had to be pretty damn certain you wanted to attack this guy before you got into it, because a lot of people couldn't take him even at 75. Anyways, that's all I've got for today, guys. I'm excited to get back into my favorite Notorious Monster videos following this one. Let me know in the comments all your favorite Notorious Monsters in this level range, and especially your favorite stories of these guys that we talked about today. Check back for more Final Fantasy XI videos, and check out some of the other new videos we've been doing too, because they're a lot of fun. Hope to see you guys back for the next one, and have a good one. Peace. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, you should totally think about subscribing. I've got videos coming out twice a week, and if you like this one, there's at least a chance you like some of the others that are very similar to this, so live dangerously. Let me know what you guys thought about the video in the comments, and other videos you'd like to see. And finally, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Hunting for Games to keep up with all the latest stuff. See ya.